Imagine for a second you have a credit card, and every single January, the minimum payment on that card,
Yeah.
it goes up.
Right.
And we aren't talking about a few extra bucks for, a Netflix subscription here. We are talking about billions of dollars.
The billions.
Now, imagine the person holding that credit card promises you, crosses their heart, looks you dead in the eye that they won't raise your allowance to pay for it. They say, "Don't worry, I'm being disciplined."
Which, in the real world, usually means one of two things. Either they're going to find the money in some secret stash you don't know about, or they are just going to stop paying the electric bill to cover the visa.
Exactly. And that is the vibe we are getting from Albany this week. Welcome to the Deep Dive. It is Wednesday, January 21, 2026.
And we are going to act as forensic accountants today.
We are. Governor Kathy Hochul just dropped a massive budget proposal yesterday. We're looking at New York State's 2026 budget.
And let me tell you, massive might be an understatement. It's a record breaker. We're digging into the numbers today, and frankly, the math is getting a little scary.
We have a stack of documents here. Press releases, the governor's speech, but more importantly, the analysis from the state comptroller and the actual budget tables.
The stuff nobody reads.
The stuff nobody reads. And our mission today is to solve a mystery. And the mystery is, how do you spend $260 billion, claim you are being fiscally disciplined, and not expect the whole house of cards to fall down?
It involves a lot of smoke, mirrors, and what we might call creative accounting.
So let's look past the slogans about affordability and see what this spending spree actually means for your wallet. Because if you think this is just Albany politics that doesn't affect you, think again.
It affects everyone.
This is your money.
From the subway rider in NYC to the homeowner up in Buffalo.
Let's start with that headline number.
Yeah.
Governor Hochul proposed a $260 billion budget.
$260 billion.
To put that in perspective, that is bigger than the entire GDP of countries like, Portugal or New Zealand. And yet, she stood at the podium and used the word discipline.
Discipline is definitely an interesting word choice for the highest spending plan in state history. It's up significantly from last year.
And here is the hook that grabbed everyone's attention. She promised no income taxes on New Yorkers. That was the soundbite. I'm not raising your taxes.
Sounds great, right?
Sounds great until you put on your reading glasses and look at the fine print.
Right, because while she isn't technically creating a brand new tax, she's extending a temporary tax surcharge on businesses and high earners.
A tax that was scheduled to expire.
Exactly. It was supposed to expire. People were planning their finances around that tax relief kicking in, and now that relief is gone.
So effectively, you are paying taxes you shouldn't have been paying if the original promise was kept.
Precisely.
It reminds me of that saying, there is nothing so permanent as a temporary government program.
But here's the plot twist that really jumped out at me.
Okay.
You have New York City's new mayor, Zohran Mamdani. Now, for those listening outside the city, this guy usually runs on a platform of tax the rich until they squeak. Right. He campaigned on a very aggressive, socialist-leaning platform. He usually frames any kind of spending cut or austerity as the enemy.
But he loves this budget?
Yeah.
He is out there calling it a meaningful investment.
Which is strange.
Why is a guy who usually complains about the governor not spending enough suddenly cheering for her?
Because he is getting state money for his pet projects. It's a classic political trade. But there is a dark cloud hanging over this whole celebration.
Which is?
While the politicians are high-fiving, the state comptroller, the guy whose job is to actually check the bank account, released a report. And it's warning about a structural imbalance.
Structural imbalance. That is polite accountant talk for we are broke, isn't it?
It's polite talk for we are spending more than we make and we don't have a plan to fix it. The state is facing a projected budget gap of $27.3 billion over the next few years.
$27 billion in the hole.
Yeah.
That is terrifying. It really feels like an election year shell game.
It absolutely does.
They're buying votes with new programs today while hiding the bill in a drawer for whoever has to clean this up in 2028.
And pretending that the bill won't come due. But in state finance, the bill always comes due.
Let's unpack this political bromance between Governor Hochul and Mayor Mamdani. It seems suspicious.
It is.
You have Mamdani, who spent his campaign yelling about taxing the rich and ending the dictatorship of mayoral control over schools.
Right.
Explain that concept of mayoral control for us quickly. Why was he so against it?
So for a long time, the NYC school system was run by a board of education. Then it shifted to mayoral control, meaning the mayor appoints the chancellor and basically runs the whole show.
And Mamdani called this undemocratic.
He did. He wanted to give power back to elected bodies, to the people.
Okay, so he campaigned on power to the people, but now, suddenly, he and Hochul are best buddies. She is proposing a 4-year extension of the mayoral control.
Giving him total power over the city schools for his whole first term.
And he's totally fine with it. He actually flipped his position.
He did. It is a classic quid pro quo. This for that. You have to look at what Mamdani is getting in return for swallowing his pride.
And what's the prize? What is worth flipping on a core campaign promise?
The prize is something they are calling childcare. It is a program for free childcare for 2-year-olds in New York City.
Okay, playing devil's advocate here. Free childcare sounds amazing. Parents are drowning in costs. Why is this a problem?
Oh, policy-wise, parents love it. The problem is the mechanics of the funding. For the first 2 years, the state is picking up the tab. Hochul is effectively funding Mamdani's biggest campaign promise so he can take a victory lap right now.
So he gets to brag about free childcare, and in exchange, she gets to keep control of the budget process without him screaming for massive new tax hikes.
Immediately, yes.
But this childcare thing, it's not magic money. Someone is paying for it eventually.
You are the taxpayer, and childcare is just one piece of why school aid is skyrocketing. The budget proposes raising school aid to $37.4 billion.
That's a $1.7 billion increase in just 1 year.
In 1 year.
And I saw something about foundation aid being up almost 6%. Can we pause there? What exactly is foundation aid? We hear that term every year.
Think of foundation aid as the base salary the state pays to school districts. It's a formula based on how many kids there are, how needy the district is. It's the main pot of money for schools.
And Hochul is raising that pot by $1.5 billion.
She is.
But I read that this increase actually busts the state's own inflation cap.
It does. They have a rule, a self-imposed speed limit to keep spending growth reasonable, usually tied to the rate of inflation. They are just ignoring it.
They're blowing right past the cap to fund these deals.
Yes.
Here's the thing that drives me crazy. We are pouring money into this system. How much are we actually spending per student now?
New York spends over $29,000 per student.
$29,000.
That is the highest in the entire nation by a lot. The national average is closer to, what, $14,000 or $15,000?
$29,000 per kid. You could send them to a pretty nice private school for that kind of money in a lot of places, or pay for college tuition.
And yet, if you listen to the advocates and the politicians, they say the funding formula is outdated, and they demand even more.
They argue it's still not enough.
Still not enough.
It feels like we are just setting cash on fire. Are the test scores going up 6% every year to match the spending increase?
The data doesn't show that, and that is the core critique here. This budget increase isn't about educational efficiency. It isn't about making sure kids can read or do math better.
It's about politics.
It is about political survival. Mamdani gets a win to brag about to his voters. Hochul keeps the city's political machine on her side for her re-election.
And the taxpayer gets stuck with a bill that grows every year, regardless of whether the schools actually get any better. It feels like we are feeding a beast that is never full.
Precisely. It is spending for the sake of spending, not for results.
Okay, so schools are expensive. We get that. But that's not even the biggest slice of the pie, is it?
Not even close.
If we really want to follow the money, where do we have to look?
You have to look at healthcare. Specifically, what fiscal watchdogs call the Medicaid monster.
The Medicaid monster. That sounds ominous.
It should. Medicaid spending in New York has tripled in the last 15 years. Tripled.
Tripled. In just a decade and a half. Inflation hasn't tripled. The population hadn't tripled.
No, but the program has. It now consumes $105.4 billion.
$105 billion.
That is nearly 42% of the entire state budget. Think about that. Almost half of every dollar the state spends goes to this one program.
That is staggering. How is that even sustainable? I know there's supposed to be a global cap on spending, like a spending limit on your credit card. What happened to that?
That is where the smoke and mirrors come in. The state uses gimmicks to hide the true cost so they can claim they are staying under the cap.
Give me an example. How do you hide billions of dollars in healthcare spending?
Well, one way is accounting tricks. They shift costs to other agencies. So if a cost doesn't appear on the Department of Health's books, they pretend it doesn't count against the cap.
But it's still tax money.
Of course. It's like taking a dinner bill and hiding it in your business expenses so your spouse doesn't see it on the joint account.
So they just move the bill to a different envelope.
Exactly. Another trick is delaying payments. This is the 13th month trick. Last year alone, they pushed $1.4 billion in payments into the next fiscal year.
Wait, so they're paying this year's bills with money they hope to find next year?
That is exactly what they are doing. It is like paying your January mortgage with your February paycheck permanently. You are always behind.
That sounds incredibly risky. If you or I did that, the bank would foreclose.
It gets riskier. They are relying heavily on something called the MCO tax.
MTO tax. Break that down for us. What is that?
It stands for Managed Care Organization Tax. Basically, the state taxes health insurance companies. The companies pay it, but the state essentially pays them back through Medicaid rates.
Okay.
And then the state gets the federal government to match that spending. It's a way to draw down extra federal cash.
It sounds like a loophole.
It is a massive loophole, and the state is counting on this, bringing in billions. But the federal government, they've signaled they might ban this type of tax arrangement.
They know it's a gimmick.
They do.
So they're building a budget on a credit card that the bank is about to cancel.
Potentially, yes. If the feds say no more MCO tax, there is a multi-billion-dollar hole in the budget instantly. And remember, enrollment is huge.
How many people are we talking?
There are over 7 million people on Medicaid in New York. The state keeps expanding benefits, adding more people, covering more services, without any long-term plan to actually pay for it.
It really seems like a house of cards. You have 7 million people relying on a system that is running on IOUs, accounting tricks, and a tax loophole the feds hate.
And when those tricks run out, or when the federal government cuts off the flow of money, the crash is going to be brutal.
So we have record school spending, a Medicaid monster eating half the budget. The inevitable question is, who is paying for all this?
Well, this brings us to the tax trap.
But Hochul said, no new taxes. That was the headline we started with.
That was the headline. But as we mentioned, it is misleading. She is extending that temporary personal income tax surcharge on high earners.
The one that was supposed to end.
The one that was supposed to end. And now she wants to keep it until 2032.
2032. That is 6 years from now. That is not temporary. That is basically permanent.
In government, 6 years is a lifetime. And this plays into the tax the rich strategy that politicians like Mamdani love. They view the wealthy as an unlimited piggy bank.
But there's a flaw in that strategy.
A major flaw. The rich can leave, and they are leaving.
We hear about people moving to Florida or Texas all the time. It's almost a cliche. Is it really that bad?
The numbers are stark. Between 2020 and 2024, New York lost 966,000 residents to domestic outmigration.
Nearly 1 million people.
Nearly 1 million people who looked at their tax bill, looked at the cost of living, and packed up a U-Haul.
1 million people. That is like the entire population of Delaware just vanishing from the tax rolls.
And we have to talk about who is leaving. In New York, the top 1% of earners pay something like 40% of all income taxes.
40% from 1% of the population.
It's a highly progressive system.
Yeah.
So if even a small percentage of those high earners leave, the state revenue collapses.
It's not just about population count. It's about wealth flight.
Exactly. We did get some international migration, about 500,000 people, but that doesn't make up for the loss of wealth. International migrants usually start at lower income levels. The people leaving are often the ones paying the bulk of the bills.
When high earners leave, they take their checkbooks with them.
They do.
So you're squeezing a shrinking group of people for more and more money. That sounds like a death spiral.
It creates a massive structural problem. And because revenue isn't keeping up, the state is doing the only other thing it can do, borrowing massively.
A credit card again.
State-supported debt is projected to jump nearly 70% to $95.6 billion by 2030.
Almost $100 billion in debt. Now, usually when the state wants to borrow money, doesn't it have to go on a ballot, like a bond act that I vote on in November?
That is the constitutional rule, yes.
Yeah.
But the state has found a way around that, too. It's called backdoor borrowing.
Backdoor borrowing. I do not like the sound of that.
You shouldn't. 96% of this new debt is issued by public authorities, like the Dormitory Authority or the Empire State Development Corporation.
Quasi-government agencies.
Exactly. And because they are issuing the debt and not the state directly, they don't have to ask the loaders for permission.
That is infuriating. So they are borrowing money in our name that we have to pay back with interest without asking us first.
Correct. They do it specifically to bypass voter approval.
So let's put this full picture together. We have the highest taxes in the nation, or close to it. We have 1 million people leaving.
Right.
And the government's response is to spend even more, rely on federal loopholes, and hide the debt in public authorities.
That sums it up. They are doubling down on the very policies that are driving the middle class and the wealthy out of the state.
It is hard to see how this ends well.
It ends with a crunch. You can't run deficits forever. Eventually, you either have to cut services drastically,
Which hurts the people relying on them.
or you have to raise taxes even higher, which just drives more people away.
It really feels like we are watching a slow-motion train wreck.
The comptroller's report lays it all out. The structural deficit is there. The discipline Governor Hochul talks about is an illusion.
It's a press release word.
It's a press release word, not a financial reality.
Let's recap this checklist of what we found in this deep dive. It is honestly a little depressing, but better to know the truth.
It is a reality check. We have record spending of $260 billion. We have political flip-flops on schools just to secure short-term political wins.
We have a Medicaid system that is eating the budget alive, running on delayed payments and risky taxes that the feds might cancel.
And we have a tax policy that is driving the tax base to Florida, leaving the rest of us to cover a $95 billion debt that we didn't even vote for.
And meanwhile, Mayor Mamdani and Governor Hochul are shaking hands and celebrating investments.
They are celebrating, spending money they don't really have. They are kicking the can down the road, but the road is running out.
So here is the question I want to leave you with today. If the state's entire plan relies on taxing millionaires to pay these massive bills, but those very taxes are driving the millionaires to leave, what happens when the last checkbook moves to Florida?
That is the $260 billion question.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time, hopefully with cheaper news.